Welcome to The Critique. Today we're looking at a transcript from YouTuber Nuxanor, specifically the video Alert, yeah, it's fucking over now. It's a really high-energy reaction piece.
It is.
It covers everything from ICE and fraud in Minnesota to, streamer drama and Trump. So let's just dive right into the analysis.
Let's do it.
Okay, so the first thing that really, I think, needs to be addressed is the structure. The material suffers from a really chaotic organization.
Yeah.
And it feels like it dilutes the impact of his strongest points,
It does, because he's mixing these really serious investigative bits with what is basically trivial internet drama.
Exactly.
I actually wrote down in my notes that it creates a pinball effect.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Well, as I was reading, I just felt the narrative was like bouncing all over the place. You go from a serious discussion like Zoran Mamdani and Islamic history.
Right. Very heavy stuff.
And then, boom, you're suddenly in low-stakes streamer drama with Hassan Piker and Amiru. Then you jump back to, serious criminal fraud in Minnesota?
And then back to memes about whistles. It's whiplash.
Total whiplash. The listener has no idea if they should be taking notes or just laughing.
Yeah, you're not primed for what's coming next.
And that's the real weakness here. That lack of segmentation makes it so hard for the audience to actually hold on to the heavy information.
I agree.
Your brain is just constantly switching gears from, investigative report mode to shitposting mode. You can't ask someone to process a $250 million fraud scheme 1 minute.
And then laugh at a streamer being called bald and fat in the very next breath.
Right. The trivial stuff just eats the serious stuff. It cannibalizes it.
So the suggestion here is really about compartmentalizing.
100%.
The episode needs to be structured by grouping the content into, distinct thematic blocks, instead of this stream of consciousness feel.
Exactly. If it were me, I'd do a complete structural overhaul. I'd create, say, a dedicated culture war block.
At the start?
Yeah, maybe right at the start. Group together the Hassan Piker stuff, the Amiru and ICE segment, the misgift commentary. Just put it all together.
So you can make one cohesive argument about influencers.
Precisely. Let the host address the hypocrisy of influencers in one solid, maybe 5-minute section. It turns these scattered shots into a focused volley,
That makes sense.
Once you've made that point, you draw a line. Then you pivot to a completely separate policy and crime block.
And that's where you'd put the heavier topics.
Right. The Mamadi analysis, the Minnesota Feeding Our Future scandal with Amy Bach, the Trump prescription pricing, all of that goes there.
That separation feels especially important for that Minnesota story.
Oh, it's non-negotiable. You just can't talk about a $250 million fraud scheme
Where he's reading actual news reports about government officials.
and then immediately cut to a comedic bit about people blowing whistles at ICE agents. It's just, no.
It makes the fraud feel like just another internet joke.
It completely deflates the gravity.
You keep the investigative journalism separate from the trolling, and the audience actually walks away remembering that $250 million figure instead of just the whistle meme.
Okay, so moving from structure to style. Let's talk about the language. The persistent use of, extreme pejoratives and all that hyper-aggressive slang, it really undermines the authority of the piece when it's trying to present actual facts.
Yeah, this is a classic boy who cried wolf problem, but for vocabulary.
That's a good way to think about it.
He presents genuinely good information. I mean, the 182% rise in anti-Semitic hate crimes, the details of the Amy Bach case, these are hard facts.
They are.
But they're sandwiched between him calling people retards or talking about slop and whore and glazing. And while that definitely works for his core audience,
It acts as a credibility filter.
that's it. It signals to any broader audience that this is entertainment, not information.
And even a sympathetic listener, someone who wants to use these facts in their own arguments, might just dismiss it all as rage bait.
Because the container it comes in is just so aggressive, it makes the research feel accidental instead of intentional.
So the suggestion then is to adopt a strategy of, let's call them strategic tonal shifts,
I like that.
where the vocabulary creates a clear line between, say, entertainer Nux and analyst Nux.
Precisely. Let's go back to that Minnesota fraud segment. When he's talking about Amy Bach, Governor Walz, Keith Ellison, for those 2 minutes, just drop the slang completely.
Use more precise language.
Exactly. Use words like embezzlement, negligence, systemic corruption, instead of just calling them retards. It's a signal to the listener. It says, hey, pay attention. This part is real news. These are the receipts.
It's an audio cue that the stakes have just gone up.
It really is. Then you can save the high-energy stuff, absolute cinema, mogged, skill issue. Save that for the reactions to Harry Sisson or the TikTokers.
Right.
But there's a much more serious example in the text where this kind of discipline is really needed.
You're talking about the segment on crimes committed by illegal immigrants.
Yes. When discussing the rape charges, specifically the Juan Ramon Suarez Talates case, the transition to calling it absolute cinema or trolling is so jarring.
It is. The script pivots from child rape charges to trolling the libs way too fast.
And if you just treat the victims with a bit more gravity, it enhances the moral weight of the actual argument he's trying to make against open borders.
But when you frame it as a win against the left, or use a term like absolute cinema,
you trivialize the actual crime. You lose the moral high ground the script is trying so hard to claim. It shifts the focus from the cost of the policy to his enjoyment of the political drama.
and that just weakens the whole point.
It does.
Okay, on to argumentation. The material frequently relies on what feel like straw man arguments or, single anecdotes to prove these really broad points.
Yeah, and this was frustrating for me to read because the stronger evidence is right there in the script.
It's just buried.
It's totally buried. He'll point to one clip, like the whistle video or Representative Jean Wu, to generalize about the entire opposition.
And he uses these emotional clips to make his case.
But then, way later in the episode, he's got this hard data, the ICE error rates under Obama versus Trump, but he doesn't use it when it matters.
It's like bringing a knife to a gunfight when you have a bazooka in your back pocket.
That's it, exactly. So the fix is to front-load that statistical evidence. Use it to pre-butt the emotional arguments you're about to show.
Give me an example.
Okay, so the clip of the crime woman in Florida who fails her driver's test because she can't speak English. His reaction right now is just, don't care, learn English.
Which is fine for a reaction, but it's not a strong argument.
It's weak. It just relies on his personality. But what if he immediately brought in the voter ID comparison he makes later on? Contrast Florida's English requirement with the fact that Somalia implemented voter ID.
That changes the whole dynamic.
It creates a much stronger logical consistency argument. It becomes, if Somalia, a place the host calls chaotic, can demand strict ID, why is it racist for Florida to demand English proficiency for safety?
It grounds the opinion in a global context, not just personal annoyance.
It makes the argument objectively stronger, and it applies even more to the ICE segment.
Right. With the kidnapping Americans narrative?
Yes. When he's reacting to the streamers claiming ICE is ripping families apart, he needs to immediately cite that data point he mentions later.
The error rate?
Yeah, that Obama's ICE error rate was 0.22% versus Trump's at 0.07%. Don't wait 10 minutes to drop that stat.
Say it right after the clip.
Exactly. You show the clip, you say, actually, the data shows the error rate is 0.07%, which is lower than under Obama. And then you do your reaction. It completely disarms their argument before it can even land.
It kills the narrative on arrival.
Right. And there was another one, a missed opportunity with the Trump RX insulin pricing. He frames it as a vanity project that liberals hate. But he should connect that success directly to the socialist healthcare argument he made earlier. About Jeff Thu?
Connect the dots.
Yes. Show that the market-based most favored nation approach actually achieved what the socialist argument promised. Cheaper insulin. It refutes the ideology directly rather than just attacking a person's character. It makes the political point so much sharper.
Okay, finally, let's talk about how the controversies are managed. Their handling of the Obama monkey tweet, it just gets so bogged down in defensiveness.
It really does. So much time is spent defending the humor of the meme. Apes aren't day, Harambe was cool, apes are awesome. It's
a defensive posture.
Very. He's arguing I'm not racist, which is exactly where his opponents want the conversation to be. It keeps the spotlight on the imagery, on the morality of the host.
And it totally distracts from the video he was actually trying to share in that tweet. It's a trap. And as long as he's explaining his love for Harambe, he isn't talking about the election fraud video.
So the suggestion here is to lean into the Streisand angle much more aggressively.
Yes, he touches on it, but he needs to commit.
Just bypass the racism accusation entirely.
Exactly. Shorten that apes are cool monologue. It just dilutes the point. It sounds like he's trying too hard. Instead, focus heavily on the argument that the controversy was the only reason millions of people saw that election fraud clip.
Frame the accident as a tactical victory.
A tactical victory in the information war. It shifts the whole narrative from defense to offense.
I like that.
He should state it explicitly, something like, the media wanted to talk about the monkey image, so consequently, they forced 6 million people to watch evidence of voting machine anomalies.
That reframes him from a guy defending a meme
Which is a losing battle.
to a commentator on media manipulation.
Which fits his whole Matrix narrative perfectly. It makes the audience feel smart for seeing through the distraction, instead of just feeling like they're in on an edgy joke. It turns the whole controversy into a tool.
So to wrap this whole critique up then,
Let's do it.
the material needs to stop that pinballing effect and organize itself into clear culture versus policy blocks.
Yep, it needs those strategic tonal shifts so the serious investigative stuff can actually land with authority.
And it has to deploy those statistics like the ICE error rates immediately to counter the emotional clips, not bury them 10 minutes later.
And finally, with the controversies, pivot. Pivot to the result, the exposure of the other video, instead of getting stuck in the mud defending the imagery.
It's really about taking all this high-energy raw material and just sharpening the edges so it cuts deeper.
Well said.
And that brings us to the end of this critique. If you want us to review your work, submit your transcript, and we'll see you in the next